Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Steven here with TB Fork, and this is day 18 of the 80 Days to Your Dream Body course. Today's protein source is going to be beef liver, and today is a legs and abs training routine. And the theme for today's workout is CRAC PNF stretching. So right now, I'm going to be demonstrating how to perform CRAC PNF stretching. Now let's get started. And while we were resting, let's continue with our CRAC PNF demonstration for the posterior fibers of the hip. Now we are going to be focusing on the lateral posterior fibers. So for this one, we want to take the knee to the sternum. What we would do in terms of the positioning is I like to do it this way, where I place the foot on my iliac crest, and then I will place my forearm on the fibula and the femur. And then what I would do is use my hip to lift, and then I'm going to lean toward the sternum, and I would instruct the patient, inhale, push your knee into me, and they would inhale, contract. And then on the exhale, try and bring your knee toward your chest. And then they would actively go into hip flexion and try and bring it. And then as an added bonus, if you want, you could add a little bit of assistance, but that is not required for the CRAC. But for me personally, I find that it does add a little bit of extra. Next, with regard to the hand positioning, we could also change. So if you want, you could just put your hand on the lateral condyle of the femur instead of the forearm. For me, I like the forearm because it's a little bit less strain on the body and I could just kind of lean into it, but find what makes it comfortable for you. You could also hold the calcaneus and then hold the femur this way with the lateral condyle of the femur in the opposite hand. But same thing. You would instruct the patient, so you would lift, lean, inhale, push your knee into my hand. They would inhale, contract. Exhale, drive your knee toward your chest, and they would actively try to go into more hip flexion. And then as a bonus, you can add a little bit of assistance and guide them deeper into the stretch. When we are focusing on the lateral posterior fibers, that is primarily going to be the gluteus maximus that we are stretching. And in this position, we are going to be targeting mostly the lateral fibers of the gluteus maximus muscle. We're also going to be targeting the piriformis. For this one, we're targeting the inferior fibers of the piriformis, and then we will also be getting the quadratus femoris. To a lesser extent, we are going to be hitting the gluteus medius and specifically the posterior fibers of the gluteus medius in this position. And then with regard to the next one, what we would want to do next is get into the posterior fibers. So for the posterior fibers, it's going to be the same as what we did for the last time for posterior. We're just going straight into flexion. But for this one, we are also adding a little bit of rotation. So we're taking the knee toward the same side shoulder. And what I would do is do the same positioning. So I would place the foot on the iliac crest, forearm over the fibula and femur, and then I would just lift, lean, and take the knee toward the same side shoulder, and then instruct the patient, inhale, push your knee into me. They would inhale, contract. Exhale, bring your knee toward your same side shoulder, and they would actively go into flexion as much as possible. And then for me, I like to just gently add a little bit of assistance and guide them deeper into it. But again, you don't need to do that. That's just me. In terms of hand positioning, again, you don't need to use the forearm. If it's more comfortable, you could just place the hand on the lateral condyle of the femur, or you could place one hand on the calcaneus, one hand on the lateral condyle of the femur, and do the same thing. So we just do inhale, contract. They would inhale, contract. Exhale, bring your knee toward your same side shoulder. They would exhale, and then they would actively bring their knee toward their shoulder. And then if you want, as an added bonus, you can gently guide them and add a little bit of assistance. That way you get them deeper into the stretch. But with regard to this positioning right over here, when we are focusing on the posterior fibers in this position, what we are primarily going to be targeting is going to be the gluteus maximus. And once again, we're going to be targeting the central fibers in this position. With regard to the hamstrings, the most of the stretch that we're going to be getting is in the biceps femoris, the long head of the biceps femoris, due to the orientation of the femur, because we are going to be targeting more of the lateral compartment of the actual hip. And because we're targeting the lateral compartment, we're also going to be getting a little bit of the adductor magnus posterior fibers. And to this one right over here, we will also be getting a little bit of the piriformis. The piriformis, between 60 to 90 degrees, it reverses its action and it becomes a medial rotator. And also it starts to do a little bit more of abduction in the hip. So depending on what the person's morphology, you can be getting a little bit of piriformis in this stretch as well. And then some secondary muscles, we're going to be getting a little bit of semitendinosus and not quite as much of the semimembranosus due to the orientation of the femur. But those are going to be the muscles that are involved in this particular stretch. Anyway, that is it. Rest period is up. Time for set number 6. That was just a tiny taste of what can be found in my members only section. If you enjoyed it, become a member for only $5 a month to get access to hundreds of member only videos.